hearing all those car names like Nash and Studebaker reminded me of just how I spent my evening last night. I went down to the Arts District and Millennium Center where they were having the Heavy Rebel Weekend. It's a summer fest that they have here. And you have all the old street rods parked outside the Millennium Center and all the tattooed rockabilly band playing on the corner. It just was that Americana from the 50s when we were on top of the world and incredibly optimistic. It was really strange for me to see people younger than me stuck in the decade before I was born. But that real sense of the United States and the American dream and the hot rods, that life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness is enshrined in the Declaration of Independence. Centuries after we dumped British tea into the Boston Harbor, British petroleum is gushing oil into our Gulf. And the sad thing is that we asked them to do it. We virtually asked them to do it in order to preserve our lifestyle and pursue our happiness. We gave the oil companies liberty from regulations. We Americans are in love with our cars. We cannot imagine life without them. Remember when you were a teenager and you got your driver's license. Now, a driver's license gives drivers license, permission, liberty, freedom, authority. Whitman wrote, "I take to the open road, healthy, free, the world before me, the long brown path before me, leading wherever I choose." Now, when he wrote this, he was afoot, and the brown path has turned to asphalt interstate. But that call for freedom remains. He also wrote, "From this hour I adorn myself, loosed of the limits of imagery, of imaginary lines, going where I list, my own master, total and absolute, listening to others, considering well what they say, pausing, searching, receiving, contemplating, gently but with undeniable will, divesting myself of all the holds that would hold me." That sense of traveling on, being a rambling man, that sense of exploring, so much to the American character. And the car is the symbol of that power and that freedom. Our attachment to it is almost mythological. The car is the vehicle of our identity. It carries our hopes and our dreams. Just consider the names of automobiles. Ford offers the Focus, a concentration of our thoughts and vision. Fiesta, a celebration of joy. The Taurus, the strong and powerful bull. The Mustang, wild and free on the open plains. And also the Escape and the Explorer. Jeep offers liberty, the Patriot, and the Commander. The Dodge Challenger, Charger, Avenger, fighting for freedom. We love that sense of freedom in our cars. But it's time to count the costs. The car is part of our lifestyle, but doesn't add to our quality of life. Though we perceive an increase of liberty and happiness whenever we're behind the wheel, cars negatively affect our lives. Now, the most obvious is accidents. Nearly 40,000 of us die each year in car accidents. One story you're not going to see in leading tomorrow's newspapers is 97 dead in fatal car accidents. And it averages to be about 97 per day. Much more than die in plane crashes and metro crashes. It's because 87% of the people get to work either by driving alone, while 4.7 take transit. There are about 18 times more driving than transit usage. By contrast, 14 times more people die in car wrecks on an average day than died on the rare day when anyone died in a train crash. On a typical day, the U.S. has 0 related train fatalities. Long story short, an investment in mass transit would have substantial public health benefits. We have subsidized the interstate highway system so much more that a works shovel-ready products stimulus is usually refers to roads and bridges. And car accidents, they kill more than our wars. But even our wars are primarily over oil. Al-Qaeda's primary complaint against the U.S. is that we had troops in Saudi Arabia. I wonder why we have troops in Saudi Arabia. And it seems to me that behind all the excuses of why we went to Iraq, oil might have had something to do with that war too. And then in our urban areas, there's been an increase in asthma. Tailpipe exhaust from both gasoline and diesel burning vehicles contain pollutants that produce ozone. Ozone occurs mostly during the summer months. A warming planet means more hot days and thus more ozone. It inflames our lungs and reduces lung function, and is evidence that makes asthma worse. And so those days that we have that are orange air alerts and red air alerts are part of the cost of loving our cars. But even more, driving leads to sedentary lives and obesity. I can speak to that. I don't walk as much as I used to. And I'm hoping that when I have moved to Indiana, I've already picked out the path and the park that I will walk to on the way to work. And if I do that every once in a while, that'll be a 2-mile walk. It's not so bad. It's doable. I'd have to walk 6 miles to get here, and there's no real path. I'd have to kind of be standing on the side of the road with the traffic rushing by. We live farther and farther from work and school and church. And so as we choose to spread ourselves out across the landscape and get into less densely populated areas where mass transit becomes less possible, we spend more time driving and less time walking. Our demand for oil has us looking for oil and harder to reach places. In recent years, there's been pressure to drill under the Great Lakes for oil. Thankfully, Michigan and Illinois and some of the states have really said we're not going to do this, but the pressure remains. If the current oil spill happened in Cleveland, it would cover the entirety of Lake Erie. Are we willing to risk the world's largest freshwater supply to drive our car? The power and the freedom that a car brings has its limitations, and I think we are reaching them. Now, my wife grew up in Chicago, and she did not have to drive until the age of 29 because of public transportation. There was a city where you were always 4 blocks from a ride. Because of cars' convenience, we don't plan. There used to be, even for country folk, you'd make your monthly trip into the city to get supplies. But now you can always just run out to the store, drive here and there, and don't make them. And of course, there's all the fast food places on the way, so you don't ever really have to shop. You just say, "Oh, I'm hungry now. Look at there." And so there's this instant gratification culture that cars bring. But that instant gratification does not always lead to satisfaction. Now, if I was an Old Testament preacher, I would say that the American love affair with the car is idolatry. And I don't think that it's realistic to think that we can do without the car. But we can be mindful of the miles we travel. Mindful as if the price of gas was, say, $10. That would make us a bit mindful. But do we have to really wait until we're pushed at that economic thing? Because gasoline is subsidized and car travel is subsidized. And from International Center for Technology Assessment in 1998, figuring in the cost of things that the government does to subsidize our driving. And some of them are direct by saying, giving tax breaks to companies to explore for oil, and other things are more indirect, like building roads. And so the range for what could a gallon of gas actually cost in the study went from a low estimate of $5.60 a gallon to $15.14 a gallon. And this was in 1998. And so the idea of how much we actually pay, when we worry about budget deficits and all that, we need to be really aware of what we are paying our taxes for and what we want our taxes to go to. And so we can lobby our government and try to stop some of those subsidies and maybe let oil rise to its actual free market price. And then the subsidies we can use to develop cleaner technologies that are more in harmony with our planet. Until those changes take place, let us drive as if gas costs 2 to 3 times what it does now. Let us find ways to share rides. And there's a sign up for transportation in the lobby to help bring people to church. And, some of you live near each other, and that might be good. And if anybody wants to come at 8 and leave at 2, I'll be willing to help you. But think of your friends. Maybe riding to church with a friend as a weekly ritual. It's just something you do in your life, and it's part of building that friendship. Spending more time with family and friends. Instead of buying the American dream of driving your way to freedom, it's time to wake up and live the American reality. Driving through our neighborhoods isolate us from one another. Walking is a way to truly live in one's neighborhood. Save the money we spend on cars and invest it in a better quality of life. Perhaps it's time to declare independence from the car. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for people to dissolve the technical bonds they have with inanimate objects and to assume among the powers of the earth and separate and equal stations to which the law of nature and nature's God entitle them, A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all people are created equal and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, discipline is instituted among people, deriving their just powers to govern themselves. Seek the life-affirming practices of walking and riding a bike, reducing risk by driving less, producing less pollution. Liberate ourselves from the car by living close to work, school, shopping, and church. Pursue happiness, walking with nature rather than driving over it. We mutually pledge our lives and sacred honor to a nation free from the tyranny of waste and greed, and to focus upon what people truly need. May we bless and be blessed.